to gash your foot against the rock. I was trying to remember the psalm, because it was the very first psalm I ever learned, or I ever read. The Lord teaches you a lot of things as you grow with Him. And one of the things that He teaches you is to always remember that as you grow in the Lord, you also grow within yourself. As I was growing up as a child, I always felt a sort of rejection there. In the beginning there was just my mum and my brothers and sister, and when I was about 5, I had a pretty nasty experience that I really don't remember much about, because you tend to shut things out of your mind as you grow. You tend to forget things because they're too painful to remember. For some reason I was sent away from my family. I was sent to live with my grandmother, and I couldn't understand why. Had I done something bad? Was I a bad girl? And I grew up always believing that I was a bad girl. And Grandma was pretty cool. She was old, but she loved me. And she tried to bring me up the best way she could on her own. But it was always in the back of my mind, why? Why couldn't I be with my brothers and sisters? As I grew, I understood why, because my grandfather had abused me as a small girl, and the shame of that, my parents decided the best thing to do was to send me away and not to send him away. You suffer a lot of anguish and pain when you've been abused, and you tend to keep the doors closed to your heart. So I grew up, and when I was about 12, my parents were coming to Australia, and they decided the best thing to do was to bring me with them, because they had nowhere else to send me. So I became part of their family again. When I was 15, I did something wrong. I became pregnant, and my parents again rejected me and sent me away from the house without any support. They virtually said that I was dead. My mother was Jewish, my father was Scottish. My mother instilled everything that was Jewish into her family, and I had done something bad against the family. Again, rejected. I had my son in Queensland, and I tried to make amends with my family, but that didn't work. I stayed with the child's father, and we married, and we had 2 other children. It wasn't an easy life being with him. A very domineering man. Didn't want children, but I did, so it happened. So I had 17 years of total domination, and I never learned to grow up at all. I never had those things that you have when you're a kid, and going to parties and meeting new friends, because I was never allowed out the door. After 17 years, I'd had enough, and I walked away from a richness and took my children into poverty. I thought it would be easy to get a job, but then nobody wanted to employ me because I'd never worked for a living except for the family and for my husband. I met a girl that had children, and she was a hooker, and we became friends. She was a single mum with 4 boys, and we became friends, and I had a car and a license, and she didn't, and she asked me if I would drive her around, and she was going to pay me well to do this. So I decided that that would be all right, because it wasn't really doing anything real bad. So for about a year I drove her around, and then divorced and still trying to bring up my children. I started to meet new people, and those new people led to more new people that were different and exciting and of the criminal element. So I started to hang around with them and go to nightclubs and party and run amok. I didn't know that it was affecting my kids. I just accepted that it was my time to have fun, and to hell with the kids, they could just put up with it. I then decided to go into business for myself. And I thought, well, I'll get some girls and I'll open up a place and, I'll be a madam. But I really wasn't cut out for that because I just didn't have the heart to continue. So then I decided with the money that I'd got, I'd open a nightclub, and I opened a nightclub, and I was still running amok. I was mixing with people that had criminal records. My house was getting raided, constantly looking for crims, people that I was hiding. I've always been a sucker for taking somebody in and looking after them. I decided one day that there had to be a better life than this. And that wasn't when God came into my life, because I always believed that God had always been looking after me in every way that he possibly could. I just didn't trust it. I remarried. I married an alcoholic. I thought I could change him. But all it did was make me become an alcoholic as well. And when he drank, I drank. We got into a lot of battles, a lot of not so nice things. Dealt in drugs, marijuana, grew it. I didn't think there was anything wrong in that. I became so sure that this was the way my life should be. I went to a meeting one day. I was invited to a barbecue, and it was a meeting, and it was with a group called the Tribe of Judah Motorcycle Ministry, and my partner at the time had an injury, and the pastor had asked to pray for him, and he said no. A miracle happened that day. He was totally healed. I figured maybe there was something in this. I'd always been a con artist. I could con anything out of anybody. So I figured there might be something in this for me, this God bit. I could become one of them godly people, and I could con people. That was my life. From 37 to late 40s. Nobody was safe from me. If I wanted something, I got it. If it was money, I got it. If it was cars, I got it. If it was jewelry, I got it. And it didn't really matter who gave it to me. But that night, something changed. So they asked me if I wanted to give my heart to Jesus, and I said no, because I had a very hard heart. Very, very hard. It wasn't that I didn't believe in him. It was that I didn't want to be a part of what I'd seen with Christians. Always smiling, always happy. They just had this thing about them. I met two people that were totally amazing. My pastors now, Liz and Terry Brown, and I worked with Terry, and I cussed a lot, I swore a lot, I embarrassed him a lot, and I was going through a battle with custody for my grandson, and it was those Christian people that came to my aid and helped me to get to court, and financed it, paid for me for my job, and I didn't have to con it out of them. They did it willingly. They paid for my lawyer's fees. They paid for my work. And there was just something about those people that were different. About a month later, I went to another meeting, and something happened. I felt this burden being lifted. Because of my abuse, not only from my grandfather, and my abuse from an uncle, and the fact that my own father, when I became a madam, thought I would become an easy prey for his friends. And so did my children. So my father tried blackmail. He would let my mother know what I was doing. But in the end, I told my mother anyway. Because I'd had enough of being abused. He stopped. he stopped trying to do it with my daughters. My brothers had a word with him. They threatened to harm him in no uncertain terms if he went near me or my daughters again. I didn't hate him. I just thought that was natural, to... I found God. When I found him, I said to him one day that there's got to be an answer for people that are hurting. And he told me that the answer was in him. And the answer was in forgiveness and forgiving people that had hurt you, and to love them as you would love yourself. Well, that's really hard to love others when you have no love for yourself. When you look in the mirror and you see nothing but badness, and God tells you that there's something good in there, and you laugh because you don't see anything good in that person that's looking back at you. You see all the bad things that you've done, the people that you've hurt, the people that you've conned, the money that people have given you to start your businesses. I remember a man giving me $64,000 one day for no other reason except that he believed in me because I wanted to start a club. And he didn't want anything from me at all. And I've never gotten anything from anybody unless I've given them something back in return. Whether it's morally or immorally, whatever the case may be. I started to trust in God. I started to believe that maybe he was the answer to all the hurts and the pain. And then I remember I went to a meeting, and I'd always had a problem with my heart, and it used to give me a hard time sometimes. It was called mitral valve prolapse. And I'm standing at this meeting, and this preacher's saying about different people to come out the front because there was a healing for them. I didn't think that God could heal me. I didn't think anybody could. And I stood there in disbelief, and I was with Lizzie, and he kept persisting that there was somebody out there that had a problem with their heart and God was ready to heal them. But if that person wasn't willing to come out the front, they should just stand there and pray this prayer. Lizzie said I had nothing to lose and everything to gain. So I did. At first I thought it was a joke. And I thought, well, I'll do it. What have I got to lose? Standing there saying that prayer, maybe 200 or 300 people there. And I was way up the back. So I stood there, and something happened, and my heart started to go crazy, and then it popped. It just popped while I was standing there, and I felt different. I went down the front for prayer, and that was the very first time that the Holy Spirit actually did a job on me. And they told me I was down there for a long time, and I was screaming out. It was like every badness in me was coming out of me that day. For the first time in my life, I ran. I could skip, I could run, I could climb stairs. I went to the doctors, and they couldn't believe it either, that, they put me on the machine, and my heart was working perfectly fine, that there was no problem. I started to believe that maybe God was a miracle-working God, and that somebody bad like me, if God could change someone bad like me, then I had to give it a go. I had to give it a shot and just find out what this God was all about. I kept on drinking. kept on swearing. I hadn't changed. He didn't want me to change overnight. He slowly worked on me, very slowly. And it didn't take a year, it took a few years. But as I grow with him, everything grows. I love what I do with people now. You know, if I can make a difference in one person's life, then that's all I care about, because God made a difference in my life. He showed me that badness in me was something that he could change. And that heart that was hard and cold, he could soften. And I started to trust him. It's not always been easy. And nobody ever says it was always going to be easy walking with God. But the one thing that I do know is that he's never let me down. There's times I have a spit with him. There's times that I have a spit with people. But when I give it to him, it just seems to ease. I have forgiveness in my heart for a lot of people that have harmed me. I've even asked people to forgive me for what I've done to them, because there are some lives out there that I've destroyed. A lot of people thought that me becoming a Christian, born again, spirit-filled, was a big joke, because how could someone like me change? The people that have known me for a long time have seen the changes in me, and they know it's not a con job. I'm not conning anybody, because you see, you can't con God. He seems to have a way of knowing when you're doing a job on him. You know, God, if you do this for me, I'll do that for you. It doesn't work. But I love the Lord with all my heart. I know that he's changed me as a person. And I know that he can do that for anyone. I know that I'm a good person inside, because he loves me. I know that if you're hurting, he can help you through it and love you through it. I know that he's always there for me when others haven't been. The life that I have now with God it's not a riches. I'm not rich. I don't have a lot of wealth. But the wealth that I have is knowing that he's by my side and he's with me. And that whatever I share with others is truly from the heart, because God gave me a new one. He took away the bad one and he replaced it with a good one. Yeah, and he's an awesome God. Yeah. My life is rich because I've got him in my life. And what can I say? God is good all the time.